good friend, Craig Goldy, back to the program tonight. How you doing, Craig?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Lance. It's good to hear from you. How are you doing?
I am doing well. We were talking off air there for just a second. We both sort of gotten through everything here, and doing well.
Good, good.
Last time we chatted about your Dream Child album. This time it's Resurrection Kings, Stargazer, coming out Friday on Frontiers Records. You remember the days when they used to release albums on Tuesdays?
Yes, I do.
I never understood that.
I didn't. You know what? I'm glad to hear you say that. I never understood that either.
Friday just makes more sense. It's the end of the week. The weekend, you've got your paycheck. Maybe it was a good thing back in the day they didn't do that. I would have dropped my entire paycheck at the music store,
Yeah.
But Friday just makes a lot more sense.
It sure does.
Yeah. Title of the album is Stargazer, and it's got fantastic cover as well. So let's start with the title and the cover art. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that was the funny thing is that I was apprehensive to use Skygazer because it sounds so much like Stargazer.
Yeah.
And people know that I'm a big Rainbow fan, so they thought it was my idea. Actually, that song started from a groove that Vinny Appice sent me, and then and it was a long one and had several different feels in it. And so as soon as I heard it, I was like, okay, I got an idea. And then little by little, I would edit the little portions that seemed to fit some other ideas. And then it was Alessandro that came up with Skygazer. And I only wrote a couple of lyrics, melody lines, and a couple of pre-choruses that I was kind of hoping would shift people's similarity paradigms as far as Stargazer and Skygazer being more of a rainbow, not necessarily a rip-off, but spin-off. And there's one area in the song where it says, we are one and we are many, and there's nothing we can't do. You stole the sky to control the planet. Oh, no, you stole the sun to control the planet, so we'll take back the sky. And that was basically like a metaphor for the lengths in which our nation's leaders will go in order to either grab, take, or maintain their power for their own, ambitions, and leaving us in a wake, and then making us kind of have to take, drastic measures just to cope. And so, in a way like, okay, well, you took the sun to control the sky, so we'll take the sky. So no sky, no sun. But at what cost? So then it's at what cost? So that's kind of like, it was supposed to kind of, because Stargazer was about a real, a fantasy type, world of a wizard and the slaves and building a tower to the sky so he could reach, the star. But so we didn't want to make people think that, we just kind of took that. It was just, it surprised me that he came up with Skygazer, but I liked it at the same time. So I'm glad we were able to kind of steer it into a different type of meaning.
Yeah. That was a true Freudian slip on my behalf. I'm sorry. I did say Stargazer, didn't I, in the beginning?
I didn't want to say anything because I thought maybe you probably go in and you can edit your voice in. Say it.
True. You know what? I like to leave these warts and all to prove that we're all human. And, I think we'll just leave it. But yeah, that was a true Freudian slip.
Oh, that's cool.
So all right. So yeah. So let's do this. The album is Skygazer, coming out July 16th. Let's talk about the track Skygazer, and we just talked about that. Let's talk about the video. That iconic Statue of Liberty shot automatically took me back to, of course, that climactic scene in Planet of the Apes when Charlton Heston comes around the corner, and there it is. Was that what you were going for with that?
Well, not really. There was a couple of different premises that the record company had sent to us. And so what I did is I said, well, what about using some of the lyrics and the artwork that's actually on the album? And so that's where this particular video came from. And so when I saw the shot with the Statue of Liberty, I even told them, I go, we need to start with that, not end with that, because that's how the original, Planet of the Apes ended. It should be more of a thing like we started where they left off, kind of like hasn't gotten any better. You know, things are just kind of getting a little squirrely down here. And this mythical man or sky gazer is the force that kind of tries to restore balance while we screw everything up.
Right. Yeah. And
So
then
go ahead.
I'm sorry, did I cut you off? Were you going to say more?
No, go for it. Yeah, it's no big deal. Yeah.
The other part that completely, I'll admit, when it first came around there, kind of scared me, was at the end of the video where that big starship, comes across the moon and everything. That was a little freaky.
Yeah, that's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was kind of hoping to use a little bit more impressive imagery for that, but even his shop, like his laboratory, I thought that was real impressive too. All the gadgets and stuff.
So much detail in that. How were you able to put that? Did you obviously shot that through the pandemic and everything? How were you able to put everything together with that?
Well, everybody kind of has their own studio and stuff like that, and so we all just kind of, I shot a couple of different things. A couple of things in front of a green screen that they didn't want to use, and I mean, me and my girlfriend went through, jumping through hoops for them, trying to, get them what they needed. And then at one point they just said, "Can you stand in front of your wall?" I said, "Okay," so that's what I did. But at the time I had been injured, and so I really was trying to put this thing off, trying to say, why can't we just use some images, and then later on when I make a full recovery, then I can move around and stuff. And if anything, the COVID thing might be a little bit better too, because they wanted us all to meet in LA, and at that particular point, LA was one of the worst places to be according to the CDC.
Yeah.
So besides Mexico, I was like, well, I don't really want to go where the CDC says not to go,
Yeah.
So we did it, So you'll see it now. When you see the video again, I'm just kind of basically standing in one position because that's the only one that I could do without causing further injury, But it was, we did what we did, and it came across cool enough, so it was okay.
Great video. Any others in the works for any of the upcoming tracks?
I don't think so. Probably because of also the COVID thing. I think that, they are going to release another song called Troubled Soul just before or on the day of the release.
Okay. Very cool. Let's jump into a couple other tunes here, because I of course got to hear an advanced copy of Sky Gazer. I'm going to repeat that a couple of times through this. I can't believe I said that, but anyways.
No, believe me, for the very beginning, I was constantly having to go back and retype Sky Gazer, not Stargazer, because I've had, that Stargazer was such a huge, part of my life that it was almost impossible not to say it, so I'm there with you, man.
So if it's happened to you, I'll take a little solace in that as well. This past weekend, of course, we're lucky enough that those of us that get these interviews, you get the advanced download and stuff. And I listened to this album and I listened to the new Heaven and Earth album. And wow, I'm like, how lucky am I,
That's great.
To get to hear this and then talk to everybody as well. Track 3, Tears. I loved the riff. It had an interesting riff, I thought. It sort of grabbed me in the same way, and I'm not saying it sounded like this. It's just, like I want to go to like the first time you ever heard Sweet Child of Mine.
Right.
That riff that Slash does. You'd never really heard anything like that before, And when this song started off, when you did that slide in, and then you started that riff that just sort of, it felt like it went around and around in my head as I was playing it through headphones, just grabbed me. I thought it was a fantastic riff. I liked the vocal melody that Chaz had with it, and just a killer solo in this song.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate that, because that song came from, actually, that was I only did 2 on this album. I really don't like to write songs all by myself, but those particular 2 songs, I just kind of, I went ahead and submitted them, because there is a song approval stage during all these albums, like the Dream Child and everything, and the first Resurrection Kings. And luckily for me, all of the songs on the Dream Child album were approved on the first try. This was one that was approved, and I really didn't. I prefer to collaborate, but I just kind of put some ideas together and just kind of thought, well, let's see what they say. And so they liked it. I thought maybe they would say, why don't you and Alessandro finish it up? Because me and Alessandro do a lot of writing together on these albums, and he does a lot of writing with other guys. And it's kind of cool. It's a collaborative effort from the top to the bottom, from the record company president to the manager of the label, Alessandro, me, Vinny, Chaz. Everybody kind of lends a hand, and other people outside, and so that's one of the main things I like about this album is it's not about me, but this was just one song that happened to squeak by that I did on my own, and it makes me feel good that people seem to kind of like that song, it's kind of nice.
Kind of bluesy,
Yeah.
Was that riff something you had or just something that sort of came up as you were doing this album, or one you pulled from the vaults?
Well, a little bit of both, because sometimes I often will wake up with a riff in my head, because I'll dream sometimes when I'm in rooms with other people, and we'll be playing stuff, and then this really cool riff will happen, and so I'll wake up and I'll have that idea in my head, and I have to grab my phone real quick and sing into it so I don't forget it, because I've learned my lesson twice. One was, oh, I'll remember this, and I wake up and go, what was that again? And it's gone. And the second one was that I need to make sure and clear my throat so that way it comes out clear the next morning. Because there was a piece I did in Japan while I was in Dio, and that I thought was real cool. And luckily, it was just enough information in the morning for me to understand it, because it came out like, what is that?
Yeah.
But luckily I remembered what it was, and I was able to re-record it, and actually it stayed with me all the way up until the Magica album is when we actually used it. But it was like back when we were on tour with Dream Evil. So it's just interesting how things can, when they come from dreams that, often they don't get utilized right away because perhaps they're meant for further down the line. But that was one of them where on Tears, the riff kind of came to me, and then the melody line kind of came to me, and the lyrics little bit by little. It just was like, I'd go to sleep. Was weird. It was almost like it was given to me. I'd go to sleep and I'd get these ideas, and I'd have to sing them into my phone and kind of piece them all together, and little by little it came together, and I was like, oh, okay, well, everybody seems to like it. That's cool. So.
Yeah, awesome. The solo in that song was killer too. How do you approach a solo? Do you do a one-off? Do you do a couple three and take parts of them? Or do you do all of the above?
Actually, I do a little bit of everything, yeah, because there is a lot to be said about just playing from your heart, and then finish with your mind. And especially a solo, to me, should be fashioned in the same way a paragraph is. It has an opening statement and a closing statement and supporting facts in between. And then the solo should also have like a little bit of a reference to the subject matter. So if it's a sad thing, there should be some sadness in there. Or if it's an aggressive sadness, then it should likewise be, musically. It should be the musical interpretation of the subject matter. That's what I strive for anyway. So sometimes I will just do a one-off real quick, thinking, okay, eventually I'll come back and redo it. And there's only been a couple of times where when I go back to redo it and I listen to the one I just did just off the cuff, I thought, wow, okay, I lucked out. That one's pretty good. So most of the time I have to do a little bit of both. I just kind of just make it up, and then what spots don't work, go in and play again off the top of my head. And then until I just can't fill anything in with just playing with my heart, then I got to finish with my mind. I thought, okay, well, what does this need in this spot? And this thing could probably be more towards the middle. This thing needs to be in front. That's in the end. And so eventually I end up doing a lot of stuff to it, and then texturizing it and things like that as well. So there's a lot to it, and sometimes it's quite easy, and sometimes it's complex. It just depends on what the song will tell you what it needs if you listen.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I don't know if you're picking it up. My dogs are going a little nuts. My kids just got home, but they're going to calm down now, I think.
Hey, kids.
Yeah, exactly. Track 5, Angry Demons, had sort of a Mr. Crowley in the opening. Then it goes off to me, and this is all just my own personal, listening stuff.
Yeah, go for it.
Kind of goes off like in a Zeppelinish mode. The note I put here was a cauldron of scalding guitars in this.
Wow,
and
that's great. Thanks.
And Chaz's vocal was just, I thought this was my favorite track on the album, and this song just really, really jumped out at me. I thought this one was really special.
Yeah, it is a special song, and that also got started with the drum groove that Vinny sent me.
Cool.
And in fact, if you want to look around at some point, that song, the album that he did with his brother Sinister.
Mm-hmm.
There's a song called Future Past that I wrote with him, and same thing. He sent me a drum track, and I wrote to it, and then I put the melody lines and lyrics together with a friend of mine here, local in town, called Scotty Bruce, and so he sang it, and it came out on his Sinister album. It's called Future Past, and then one me and Chaz did together called Killing Floor.
I'll have to check that out. Now, was there ever a time where the four of you got together during the recording of this, or did COVID put a kibosh to that, or?
Well, it did. as far as that, because normally we do like to be in the same room. In fact, when Chaz and I wrote for the first Resurrection Kings album, there was two songs especially called Living Out Loud. Him and I worked together in the same room while we wrote that song. Same thing for Under the Wire, but that one ended up going into the Dream Child album. And that's my favorite thing to do, is to be in the same room. But when you can't, it's good to know that you can work with guys who know what that's like, so you can kind of recreate it. You can at least have, the being together at the same time, whether you call, talk on the phone or talk on Skype or email. You're working together in real time rather than just here's an MP3 and get to it when you can and send it back to me. Then I'll send back to you, and it's kind of like a ping pong thing. That can work, but you still have to know the rules before you can break the rules. And luckily, Vinny and Chaz and myself and Alessandro, we're like hybrids. We know how to do things old school, and we know how to do things new school. So when it comes time to when, you're limited by, COVID, for instance, where you can't do it old school, you can do things new school, but still give it the old school feel. And that's what we did.
Excellent. Don't Blame Our Love. To me, epic power ballad. Took me sort of like, often sort of a House of Lords kind of vibe. And I think this song just begs for a majestic sea to mountaintop type video, just the way that it's. Great tune. Is this a collaboration, or anybody bring this one in special, or how did this one come about?
That one, again, I'm not sure if Alessandro wrote that all on his own, but that's definitely one that he had written with another outside writer. And same for Calling All Angels. Mm-hmm. And Is This the End? Same for Savior of Souls.
Yeah, I love that title.
Yeah, that's a great title. And same for what's the other one?
Set Me on Fire.
World's on Fire.
Yes, Set Me on Fire.
The other ones, me and we all worked together. Or me, it was a riff of mine or something like that. So like Set Me on Fire, it was another one I did on my own. And luckily, I wasn't really that knocked up about it. The chorus either, and then the record company said the chorus needed to be stronger, so they actually sent it back, and then that challenged me, so then I actually got a chance to kind of beef it up a little bit more, and so it actually brought the song to where it needed to be. Trouble Soul is another one, a riff of mine with Alessandro. Him and I worked really. I love that song because it's so bluesy.
That's the note I had.
Yeah, Tears. Same thing with Tears and Angry Demons and Skygazer. So it's definitely a melting pot of writers and stuff, and I like that because it really tends to give it a broader spectrum.
Yeah, the thing that caught me on Set Me on Fire was that little bit of electronica in the intro. I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh yeah, that was just something I kind of did just as a joke, because I thought it would be kind of weird. Like there's a couple of times I do that where I'll start a song and it sounds bad on purpose, and then it starts, and all of a sudden when the guitar kicks in, or it becomes such a stark contrast that that's why the guitar sounds so cool when it starts in, because of that goofy kind of intro. It's like, what is this all about? It's not horrible, and it's not like I hate it or anything. It's just really meant to cast contrast before the riff comes in.
It catches your ear. It definitely catches your ear, very cool. And you mentioned Calling All Angels. When I got to that one, I wasn't sure what, I always like to give the albums my last song test. I always say I'm going to make sure you're trying as hard on the last song as you were the first, and I liked it. It was to me, it was sort of a slight departure from the sound of the rest of the album, a little more melodic, almost like a power metal sound, I thought. But I thought it worked great, and it made for a great closer.
Well, that was these songs actually weren't written in the order in which you hear them, which is good. Yeah. Calling All Angels was a lot like there's another song on the first Resurrection Kings album. The title of it kind of escapes me for a minute, but it's oh God, what is it? I'll think of it in a minute. But it's like a journey, like a heavier journey.
Yeah.
Is what that sounds like to me.
Yeah.
But I like Journey, so I don't mind it. Like I said, it just kind of gives it a broad spectrum of different types of music that we like, and we put it all together in one album.
Yeah. Now, this is the second album you've had the same lineup for both these albums with you and Vinny and Chaz and Sean, right? And Alessandro helping out?
Well, I forget what it was. There was something that went on between Sean and the record company that I guess never got resolved, and so Sean isn't on this album, but he was on the first one. I love Sean, so it definitely didn't come from me. It just, I don't know exactly what happened, and so we'll let Sean and the record company tell that story, because it's their story to tell. It happened to be between the two of them, not the band. That's for sure.
Yeah. And of course, you and Vinny go back to the Dio days. How did you hook up with Chaz? I was lucky enough to interview him a while back too for his Westbound album, which is fantastic. How did you and Chaz meet up?
Well, it was quite a while ago. He was doing a thing called Hollywood All Stars, and Krieger from Jafria was drumming, and I think it was something that Vinny Appice and Jeff Pilson started together called the Hollywood All Stars, and they would get guys who were off tour and still wanted to work and go out and play, so they would utilize their own catalog. So, like, for instance, when Carlos Cavazo was playing guitar, they'd do some Quiet Riot. When Vinny was in there, they'd do more Sabbath and Dio, stuff like that. And so I forget for what reason, something had happened with Carlos, and they needed someone to fill in. And so I knew Vinny and I knew Krieger, but at the time Krieger was playing drums, and so he asked me if I could lend a hand. And Jimmy Bain was the bass player. I was like, well, yeah, I love playing with Jimmy and Krieger, so that would be great. And so they sent me a DVD for me to learn from. So because they were going to do the same set list that was on that DVD, and there's Chaz, and I'm thinking, dear Lord, this guy is just singing every single song like the singer that did or did not do that, with all the notes and power that most guys can't do anymore. And I was really impressed with him. So I think our first gig was in Vegas or something. So Chaz and I actually drove together on the way up there and actually kind of formed a friendship that lasted beyond that band, because at one point there was something else I ended up having to do and couldn't work with them anymore. And that's when Andrew Freeman stepped in. And I think that's when Jimmy and Andrew Freeman started getting kind of friendly, to have him be the singer for The Last in Line. And it just happened to be that way. And then Chaz and I looked at each other and said, man, I'd hate for this to be over. Let's try and, do some songs or something. And everybody says that, hey, let's try and do some songs together someday. But you can tell we really meant it. And so a week later, I drove some of my equipment up to Chaz's place and stayed overnight a couple of nights, and we wrote some songs together.
That's awesome. Excellent. Once again, the album is Skygazer by Resurrection Kings, coming out this coming Friday, July 16th on Frontiers Records. Talking with Craig Goldy here for Let's Discuss with Lance Hall. If you don't mind, Craig, I had just a quick question for your Jafria days.
Yeah.
Love that first album. I remember hearing Call to the Heart the first time on radio and everything. That was a real, though, sort of with Greg Giuffria, obviously in the band, a keyboard-driven band. How did you came out of Rough Cut into them? How did you figure into the mix? There weren't a whole lot of guitar. It was a lot of keys.
Yeah, that's true. And that was okay too, because I love Foreigner and Journey, so I'm okay with that. And at the time, I was in Rough Cut. And so there was a place called, oh God, now I can't remember the name of the place. Oh, the Country Club. And so Rough Cut was headlining the Country Club. And I didn't know this, but Greg Giuffria and a record company were sitting in the balcony above talking about his new project and that they were looking for a guitar player. And so the record company guy pointed at me and said, why don't you get this guy? And so he started noticing me a little bit more. So at the time I was living at Ronnie's house, and he was still finishing up a couple of Sabbath dates. And so while I was kind of house sitting for him, I get a phone call from Greg Giuffria. And so but he approached me that night. Sorry, I'm not doing chronologically well. That night he said, hey, here's my phone number, what's your number? And, let's get a hold of each other. I got something you might be interested in. I said, okay. And so before he called me, I put together a couple of ideas just in case we were going to get together, which actually turned out to be a song called Don't Tear Me Down. Mm. And so we got together, and I went over to his house, and he played me some videos of him and Punky Meadows and David Glen Isley. And I saw it. Sometimes I can just see things in the future. I wish I could see, winning lottery tickets, but it just, something told me this is going to be big. This is going to be big. So I actually, right then at that time is when Rough Cut got a record deal on Warner Brothers. Now this was a big deal for me because, all those years listening to the Burn album on Warner Brothers, seeing that label go around and around in circles while I'm watching the turntable go, listening to Deep Purple, I'm getting ready to be one of those guys that's now on that same label. Somebody else is going to watch the vinyl turn around and around and listening to me. I thought, this is exciting. And Ronnie James Dio, my favorite singer, he's the producer, and we became friends. And I had to walk away from all that. Mm. And everybody thought I was crazy, except Ronnie. In fact, he came over to me. He goes, Goldy, don't get upset or get your feelings hurt if I have to act like I hate you when I'm around the Rough Cut guys. He goes, because I know what you're doing, and I get it. I fully support you. And I just knew it was going to be big. And everybody thought I was crazy because at the time, Greg Giuffria didn't exactly have a very good reputation around L.A. For whatever reason. And they didn't have any, monetary support or anything like that. So I was leaving a record deal on Warner Brothers with Ronnie James Dio as the producer, my favorite singer, to Greg Giuffria was some guy who not very many people seemed to like him, in LA anyways, to form a band without a record deal and no financial support. And just prior to that, I had been homeless, when I got up to work with Rough Cut guys. I was still sleeping on everybody's couches here and there. So I was still basically homeless, and this was a bad move, as far as everybody thought. But then a year later, Rough Cut got dropped off the label, and Giuffria had a hit song in the top 40, well into the top 40. Number 9 in the MTV Top 20 video countdown, and we got to tour with the reunion album of Deep Purple. So I got to meet Richie Blackmore, the whole reason why I started playing guitar in the first place. And I was able to have a one-on-one confrontation with him that turned out to be really cool in his private dressing room.
There you go. I read that you can debunk this or whatever, because I read it on the internet, so it's got to be true. The Deep Purple guys were not very nice to you guys on that tour.
Well, there's way more to it than that. For one thing, those guys were gentlemen, even Richie Blackmore.
Okay.
The first night, John Lord came in to introduce himself and say, "Hey, let's have a good one, guys." Yeah. And same thing with Roger Glover. We all met at the bar the night before the tour, and Richie was there, Ian Gillan. It was just like, oh wow, I can't believe it. This is going to be great. But what had happened is that Greg Giuffria and David Glenn Isley kind of walked in there with a sense of entitlement.
Ah, okay.
And I was just happy to be there. Actually the first night we got kicked off the tour because of my guitar solo. They'd never seen anybody come in where Dave Isley would sit on his knees and hold the guitar up like a guitar stand, laying flat, and I would walk over to it and play it like a piano. And then the people just went nuts, and playing guitar with one hand and all this different stuff I tried to work up, because everybody was trying to come up with the latest thing since Eddie came along.
Right.
He re-revolutionized guitar from stem to stern. Yeah. But see, Ritchie Blackmore didn't know that he had the biggest Ritchie Blackmore fan on the planet opening up for him. They picked us because of the Call of the Heart song, because he thought we sounded like Journey. There was no guitar threat. Right. And we were topping the charts, and so he thought that's why we got on the bill. But when that first night, we were not the band that he thought we were, and I was not the guitar player he thought I was. Yeah. So 3:00 in the morning the next night, we get this emergency meeting that we've been thrown off the tour, and so the agent looks at me and says, "Well, Goldy, if you don't do your guitar solo and you guys try to tone down the set, you can stay on the tour. So all eyes on me." So I go, "Well, of course we'll stay on the tour, Yeah. And so throughout that whole time, here's Greg and Dave now with a chip on their shoulder, walking around like, not only with a sense of entitlement, but, hey, fuck you guys. Well, what do you think's going to happen? These get Deep Purple. This is rock and roll royalty. You don't walk around like you own the place when you're opening up for the world's best band, giving you an opportunity, to promote your new record. I mean, that's especially on the reunion tour. That is huge. You don't walk around with entitlement. You should be on your hands and knees thanking God every day. Or at least that's the way I took it.
Sure.
And so so I couldn't do the solo for 3 months. It made MTV News, which was great. I'll never forget that. I was actually at my parents' house because I grew up in an abusive family, so I was actually able to forgive them when we all became friends and became close again. So I'm at their house on a break, and all of a sudden you see on MTV News, Craig Goldy, lead guitar player from Giuffria's, got legendary guitarist Ritchie Blackmore shaking in his boots. I'm like, oh my God,
That's awesome.
So the last night of the tour, I figure he can't kick us off the tour because it's the last night. So I did the solo. And so I'm walking down the hallway, and it's empty by that time because we were kind of stayed a little late. And I see Ritchie walking towards me as I'm going towards him. And actually, there's more room for me to get where I need to go than before I meet up with him. I'm like, oh, no. And so he comes up to me, and there was a thing I developed where I play with one hand, and I mute the strings with my right hand. Because when I used to give lessons, I used to write out solos note for note. So that was my way of figuring out if it sounded exactly right and if I wrote it out right. Yeah. And I thought to myself, I wonder if I could play with one hand. So when I plugged my guitar in, it sounded horrible because it's a percussive movement and all the other strings would vibrate. So that would create noise. So my first reaction was to mute the strings of my right hand, then I could fully play with one hand. And it took a little while to develop it. So Ritchie Blackmore comes up to me after all these years of me trying to figure out his solos note for note and says to me, "You have to show me how you do that."
Wow.
And I went, what? And so I just said, well, you got to do this and you got to do that. And I ran into the dressing room and hid because I was frightened. Yeah. And then I'm sitting there going, you idiot. There's Ritchie Blackmore asking you what to do. And then you ran. And then before the tour, Ronnie told me things not to do. And one of them was don't go knocking on his dressing room door trying to talk to him. Sure. But that's exactly what I did. Huh. I got my courage up and I walked over and I knocked on the door and Ritchie answered. And I said, man, I've idolized you for years. And his eyes rolled. I didn't realize why. He had told me later that a lot of the guitar players who he did the same thing to, no solo, they would come over to him at the end and say, I idolized you for years. Fuck you. And they would flip him off. So he was ready for that. Yeah. And instead I said, I don't care who comes along with what, kind of mimicking my one-handed thing or playing behind your head or anything. I said, you're the best and you always will be. And I said, no hard feelings. And I put my hand out and he shook it. He said, come on inside.
Wow.
And we had the best conversation after that, just one-on-one with some of his guys there. And it was amazing. And I'll never forget. He's a real gentleman. You just got to treat him with the proper respect. Not very many people know how to do that.
Right. Right. I was going to say, respect gets you a long way. So
Yeah.
very cool. You guys also did some gigs with Foreigner, didn't you?
Yep. Right after
And they were
that.
touring Agent Provocateur at the time, which was
That's
their
right.
huge album.
That's right.
Wow. I wish I saw them in Montreal that summer on that tour, but they had Joe Walsh with them, which was great. But looking back now, man, I wish I could have seen Jafria.
Oh, it was great, man. They would come back and talk with us. They were such good guys, and sometimes they would have all the local church. Not sometimes, they would bring in all the local churches choir.
Right, the choirs, yeah.
And they had a choir director there, and so during the day they'd be working on "I Want to Know What Love Is," and one of the nights they actually gave us some robes so we could go on the stage and sing in the choir for "I Want to Know What Love Is" on stage with them sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That's awesome. I remember when they did that song and that choir came out. I had read that they were doing that, and when it came out, it just makes the hair on your arms go up.
It really does, man.
Awesome.
And think about this. Almost an hour and a half set where every song on their set list was a hit song.
Yeah.
Most of us only had like one or two, hit. They had every single song they played on that list was a hit song.
There were no clunkers in there, no filler.
No, but I mean, it was a real hit song on the charts and everything.
Yeah, exactly. A charting hit. Many of them top 40, top 20, top 10 number ones.
Yeah.
Amazing. Any plans at all to tour Resurrection Kings? I mean, everything's still, kind of here, there, and everywhere. Have you been able to put anything together?
Well, yeah, we definitely want to, because actually in California we were able to tour some of the Resurrection Kings here in California. The only thing is that because of the streaming thing, really chopped the legs off of a lot of things. Because I read still people saying, oh, another project from Frontiers, oh, another band these guys are in, and can't they just do one band? And well, we can't do one band because of the streaming thing. Now that we were all basically sidemen, so now that we've earned the right and worked our asses up to get to the up the ladder of success to earn the lion's share of profit sharing for the very first time in our life, there is no lion's share, there is no profit sharing because it's being streamed, so it's just like being stolen.
Yeah.
So we have to do like 10 different things just to make the equivalency of one. And I get it, that a lot of people got tired of forking out $15 just to get two good songs and things like that, and there's no way they could possibly afford all the new music that comes out every single day. I get that too. But for me, the money wasn't getting rich or anything wasn't the plan. It was because the money was supposed to be a tool. Because remember, I was homeless, so I never had anybody come up to me to help me out. I wanted to be that guy, to have some money in the bank to be able to go, and because I used to do that all the time. Anytime I'd have a little bit of extra cash, I'd walk the streets and dress like I was still homeless and hang out with people. And when you're one of them, they'll tell you the truth. They won't try to tell you a lie just to get you to give them money because they think you're one of them. Because I was one of them, so I knew how to talk. And eventually, you start to find out, there's a couple of people out there that just got really dealt a dirty deal like I did. Because people would look at me when I was homeless like I was just a waste of life. They didn't know that I had Madison Square Garden in my future, playing with Ronnie James Dio side by side, my favorite singer, doing music together. They didn't know that I had that in me. They just looked at me like, oh, this homeless little piece of crap, And that's what they do now, So, I wanted to be able to be one of those guys that could walk over and say, hey, man, I know exactly how this feels, and get them off the street and help them, get on the path of their destiny, and that's where the money was supposed to go to. So every time people stream or steal our music, they always say, hey, we're listening to you on Spotify. You sound great. Well, it's like saying, well, thank you, man, for the 0.00003% of a penny.
Right. And then they send you an actual check for sometimes.
Yeah, I get checks for 46 cents.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, and then the band started hiking up ticket prices and only signing autographs by the merchandise table, and so I just wish that eventually we were all at one time we were all in this together.
Yeah.
And now it's just, I just hope to restore balance, because that would be great, because the support, it's a different type of support when you work your ass off and give people the best album you can possibly give, and every single song on there is great, and you buy it for like $10, and then that $10 goes towards being able to give them the opportunity to tour and do another album, and like Ronnie, and treat you like a king when you get to meet him, treat the fans like they're supposed to be treated. It was a team. When Ronnie was with us, that was the most beautiful point of balance, is that Ronnie would spend every moment before he'd leave that concert venue making sure every fan was taken care of, hugged, told how appreciated they were, took a picture, signed autographs, spent time talking, making them feel important because they were, and that's the kind of thing I want again, is to be able to do that kind of, where we're in this together, we're all a team, and the up and coming guys would get help, rather than being, stuck down because of jealousy. It's all this greed and people are taking advantage of how lazy people are, and how everybody wants that instant gratification, and nobody really wants to work for anything. And so this world is just, you'll get your reward, but it's not going to be a great one. We need to restore things to where it was before, because everybody got a piece of it and they all felt important.
Exactly. We talked about this briefly in our last interview.
I thought so. I was going to say, might probably sound like a broken record.
Well, no, I mean, we talked about it, and I brought up the fact that I saw Ronnie back, I'll never forget, it was September 14th, 1985, in the New Haven Coliseum on the Sacred Heart Tour. To this day, the greatest show I've ever seen. The $1 Million stage set, which in 1985 was huge money, and tickets were $15.
Yeah, he didn't hike up the tickets. That was his way of giving back to the fans. Thank you. I remember you brought that up the last time. Yeah, thank you for that, because that's important, because he didn't hike up ticket prices. That was his gift. That was his gift back.
Yeah, to this day, me and the guy that went with me, and he wasn't supposed to go. I was supposed to take a girl, and she backed out. And I ended up calling up my friend Bernie and saying, Bernie, I got to, Tammy's not going to go. You want to go? Oh, shit, yeah, he says. And I honestly thought, as we walked out of the Coliseum that night, I thought the guy was going to kiss me. I mean, he was that happy. He was over the moon. And 35 years later, we talk about it every time we see each other.
Yeah, that was the magical time, man. That's when the true balance was in full bloom. And I mean, like, listen to you. When I hear your voice, I know I've told you this before too. I mean, you just have a gift. You were born to do this, and much more. But you just have a gift. You know how to get things out of people. You're warm. You're kind. You're super intelligent. You're very funny, and you can just, you might have like a guideline of what you want to make this interview, but you also just kind of go with the flow, and you and I would just kind of go around, it's like a long lost brother family reunion when I talk to you. You're just, and that's so important these days, that everybody has a chance to, to do their part, because everybody is so nobody's more important than anybody else. Nobody is more important than anybody else.
Absolutely, and I appreciate it very, very much, Craig. Thank you very, very much. Total God-given gift. I mean, I do my research, I put my stuff together, but the rest is just a God-given gift.
That's right. I absolutely. I'm glad that you can recognize it. Very few people can recognize it, and I'm glad you do. I'm happy for that.
So the album, once again, Resurrection Kings, called Skygazer, out July 16th on Frontiers. And you know what? I always like to end with those silly questions. You up for a few silly questions?
Absolutely.
All right. What is one basic item when you go out on tour that you have to bring with you, other than the obvious, guitar picks and stuff like that? What's an item you've always got to throw, like, in your travel bag, in your suitcase, that you can't go on tour without?
At the time, it would have to be my Bible and a Deep Purple CD and a CD player with headphones.
All right. Very cool. Household appliance you can't live without.
Ooh, I guess, well, A blow dryer. My
Okay.
hair looks ridiculous. I have to blow dry it a certain way, otherwise I look really ridiculous. I look ridiculous anyways, but at least I have a fighting chance.
Very cool. If you could speak any language that you do not speak now instantly, what language would you pick?
Oh, now it would be Danish. Before it was
Danish.
German.
Okay.
Yeah.
What food do you like better as a leftover than freshly made?
Ah. Um, Lasagna.
Okay. Give us a memory of something that decorated your teen bedroom.
Richie Blackmore poster, and I used to paint. I can draw and paint like a photograph, so I used to paint Frankenstein's in black light um, paint, so that way when the lights went off, they would glow.
Very, very cool. If you could pick a television show to put a song from Resurrections Kings into, what song would you pick to place it in? What TV show would you place a song of yours in?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Uh, God, there's some really good TV going on right now. I missed the. Do you remember a TV show called Leverage?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I missed that, and I would like to put maybe Skygazer in there because it is actually there's a part in there where it talks about the one lyric. There's two lyric sections I wrote. One of them basically says the metaphor of it. It's like we are one and we are many. There's nothing we can't do. You stole the sun to control the planet, so we'll take back the sky.
Mm.
So it's almost like it's basically a metaphor for the lengths in which our nation's leaders will go to grab, steal, take, or maintain power for their own ambitions, leaving us to deal with life. We have to sometimes take drastic measures, but at
Yeah.
what cost? And then the sky gazer is like the mythical being that tries to restore balance.
Mm.
So that would probably be for that one for leverage because the good guys became the bad guys became the good guys,
All
and
right.
then they end up finding that the so-called good guys are really the bad guys,
Yeah.
and they try to restore balance. Yeah,
Absolutely. Have you ever prank called anyone?
yeah, I used to do that a lot, especially when I had kids, because
Mm.
a lot of my marriages they had kids, and so I loved being around kids, and so we would do crank calls, not mean, just fun
Yeah.
ones. And one time my favorite kid, Lacey. In fact, we got a chance to talk recently. We would just go and knock on strangers' door and say, "Is Bethany here?" They're like, "Huh?" No. Well, my daughter, her friend Bethany used to live here. You guys haven't been here for longer than 5 years, have you? They go, "No, I think we just moved in a little while." Oh, we're sorry. Oh, well, because she had a doll, that she placed in the top corner of her room, and she was kind of hoping to. So they'd let us in the house, and we'd walk around. And she's like, 9 years old, and we would just, oh, I used to love that.
What would you have ever done if you asked for a Bethany and there was one there?
I know.
Oh, all right. Amusement park. Are you a roller coaster or a Ferris wheel guy?
Neither now, but I used to love the roller coaster. It's called the Viper at Six
Uh,
Flags. That thing was ruthless.
Excellent. Last one. What would be the title of your autobiography?
Stop or I'll sing.
Yeah, excellent, excellent.
No, actually,
Craig,
it would be called The Other 23 Hours.
the other 23 hours. Well, Craig, I knew this would be fun. I knew it would be special, and it has been. And just once again, I want to commend a fantastic album. You and Vinny and Chaz and Alessandro, this Resurrection Kings Skygazer album, which once again will come out July 16th on Frontiers. Excellent stuff. Great album. Be proud.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lance. It's so good to talk to you again, man. It's like just talking to a long lost brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully you'll get another project going at some point, and we'll get to chat again. I would really like to do that.
Yeah, me too. And I'd like to be able to see you face to face one of these days too.
Exactly. That was the other thing. If you ever get, if things open back up and we get a tour around, I definitely will be hitting you up to do the classic meet and greet.
Oh no, well we'll make sure to treat you like a king. Yeah. Yeah, that would be great.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Lance. You're awesome. You're great, and I really appreciate you. And this has been a real pleasure. And I rarely feel inspired after an interview. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love interviews.
Sure.
And it's an honor and privilege. And the day that stops coming, or requests for interviews come, is going to be a big fat bummer. But until then, it's an honor and a privilege to do it and to be asked. But at the same time, it's rare when I can feel inspired afterwards. Like I want to take on the world rather than, oh, thank God that's over.
And likewise for me as well, to get to talk to people who I, have either seen on stage or played their albums or had their posters on my wall and everything. It's pinch me moments,
Oh, thank you, man.
Enjoy the rest of your evening, Craig. Hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Okay, you too, Lance. Thank you so much, man.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.